And it is a rainy Sunday morning. My name is Dark Lady Selena. Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to talk about Satanism today, or in fact, what Satanism truly is. Before we get started, please help support Witchcraft TV, show how we'll cause some love, also help support us satanic content creators. You can check us out at TST TV, that is satanictemple.tv. So one of the big questions I think that people have in this crazy world that we live in is, what exactly is a Satanist? What exactly do we believe? What exactly do we do? And there's a huge percent of the population that has this stereotypical view of what they think Satanism is. And they run with that view. And these are generational views, right? They see Satanists as dark, brooding people who are up to no good, creating issues. But that couldn't be further from the truth. So we're going to review this article that came out about us Satanists in Texas, because why not, right? So here we go. Satanists are raising hell in Texas. Here's what you should know. In fact, I could tell you what you should know before we even get started. And this article does cover it. We Satanists are not dark, brooding people. I am one of the rare few that merged witchcraft and my teachings of witchcraft into Satanism, creating a brand new school or theory of magic, right? What we do as Satanists is we try to better the world. We do works of charity. We support equal rights. We support the protection of children and women around the world. There is a lot that we do that I think the world just doesn't want to know. They just hear the term Satan and suddenly in come all the negativity and ill speak and all of this. And by the time we're done with this article, hopefully I have changed your mind, or at least opened your worldview to a little bit. So let's jump in. There's a nice statue of Baphomet. All right. There's a growing contingent of Satanists in San Antonio and beyond, but it may not be what you think. These souls hating Satan are not of the devil-worshipping persuasion. In fact, they don't believe in the devil at all. We don't. Satanism believes in self-empowerment. It's a belief where you are your own temple, right? Where you have that right through body autonomy to decide what you want to do, not what the world tells you to do. And a lot of times, I think, in some of the world's religions, you're sort of told what to do from the get-go without questioning, especially in the Christian mindset, right? But true religion allows you to explore the self and to develop the self, empower the self. And this is what we truly believe, is that your body is your own temple. You have body autonomy as long as you're not harming other people, right? Which is something we do not do. All right, let's continue. The Satanic Temple of San Antonio boasts about 36 members in its congregation. And while they draw their fair share of haters in online circles, it isn't quite the satanic panic of decades past. Yeah, there is a lot of hate out there. A lot of people, this is part of the problem. There are people who view Satanists in a dark, sinister way, right? They view us as a counterculture. They view us as groups of people who are worshipping the infernal, and truth be told, we're not. There's a difference between, like, true Satanism really is the development of the self, mind over matter, mind over body, allowing ourselves to really explore everything within legal parameters, naturally. And I think the reason why we get so much hate is that there isn't a lot, that there is so much mixed media out there, right? The media portrays us as sinister, as dark, as brooding, chaotic, right? As people who would violate the law. Do we? No, in fact, we follow the law to the letter. But our goal is to empower society so that people find their true self, their true intentions, their true personality, if you want to call it that. And we do this through teaching, we do this through charity, we do this through getting out into the public to help people overcome all of these negative circles, right? We don't all sit around trying to summon the infernal. That's one of the big misconceptions that's out there, right? That we are somehow calling in the Antichrist. Are we? No, not even close. It's not part of Satanism, right? And there's a lot of philosophy behind it, which I've covered before, including the 7 tenets, which we discussed on this channel before. The idea that we follow the law. Our bodies are our temples, right? We have autonomy, where we are people who are in society who are generally trying to make society better for everyone through works of charity, which is another important factor. But let's carry on through this article because there's a lot to go into here. All right. The religious organization's work in South Texas community has even gained messages of support, often from Christians. Let that sink in. We've gotten support from the Christians. Now, why would you think that? Surely the Christians would be like, oh, hell no, no pun intended. But no, the Christians do support us. They see us as individuals who are just trying to make a difference in any community that we live in. They see us as hardworking individuals. They see us as not going out and proselytizing and doing all of that, because we don't. And therefore, the Christian world is slowly accepting of it, right? They accept the theory. They may not accept the practice, but they accept the theory, which is important, right? Which is all about self-empowerment. And truth be told, Christianity is also relatively, but not to the extent that we are, but relatively all about empowering the soul, right? The divine belief. And this is why we've garnered a lot of support from the Christian community, is they're finally coming around to seeing we're not bad people. We're here to make a difference. We're here to educate. We're here to build all these bridges within the communities that we minister to, right? But we don't just go out and say, you have to convert. That's not what we do. And this is the biggest difference between Christianity and Satanism. Satanism, truth be told, is a theory. And that theory is about the self. Christianity is an established religion that deals heavily in monotheistic traditions, right? Where there's only one supreme deity. In Satanism, we don't believe that. We encourage people to believe in whatever they want to believe. And are we a part of paganism? Absolutely we are, right? We've been a part of paganism from the get-go. We're kind of the stepchild, if you want to call it that, right? But yeah, this is why we get a lot of support. Christians get it. They don't see us as bringing on the Antichrist, right? They see us as just hardworking individuals that are just trying to make the world a better place. The advocacy and charity work runs the gamut, from donating box fans to help keep San Antonio's elderly residents cool during the summer months, to creating the template letters parents can send to opt their children out of reading religious texts in schools. Again, it's all about the autonomy, right? We believe that children should be allowed to practice whatever faith they want to practice without being forced to read something that may not go along with their faith. As for charity, we are very big in charity. Everything and anything you could probably think of when it comes to charity, we have a hand in it. We literally spend our time working with charities to help support the needy, to help support the sick, to help support people who are going through a dark time. And this is why we have a lot of support from the Christian community. Sure, they may hate it when we say that we are trying to pass legislation so that kids shouldn't be forced to read religious texts in schools, because kids are kids. And when you're reading religious texts, it's really designed for the brain that has fully developed, right? And it's really designed for people who are going to proceed with the faith. Kids are different. Kids should not be exposed to this kind of literature, no pun intended, but they really shouldn't be. And this is something that we are adamant on teaching, is kids should just be allowed to go to school to be kids. to learn, to develop friendships, to learn the rules of life. So we mix charity with legislation, right? So we push a legislative stance where we feel that religious texts in schools is probably not a good idea. And for that, we've drawn a lot of hate, truth be told. A lot of hate. People are like, yeah, but we need religious texts in schools to empower our children into faith before they're even ready to begin that journey into faith. So, in other words, they're forcing children into a belief set that those children may not even agree with. They may not even understand it, right? As I said, kids just need to be kids. This is the important part. As for our charity, yeah, we do charity for pretty much anything and everything. We try to make sure that we're making the best out of society. I think we're seeing more people saying they don't really believe in Satan. They're just a group of folks trying to be good, said David Fremont, who helps lead the congregation in San Antonio. Yeah, that is our goal. Truth be told, that's our goal, to do good. Well, how do we do good? Well, we go above and beyond to work with the communities in which we live, to help people who are going through hardship, to help the homeless, to support women's rights, to support the LGBTQ plus IA movement, right? That there's a lot that we do in the name of good. Now, as for the actual belief in Satan, again, this is one of those contested things. If you look at the teaching of tarot, the devil card, Satan, whatever you want to call it, is about overcoming the addictions, overcoming everything that has held us back, overcoming things which drag us down, overcoming obstacles in life, no matter what those obstacles are. The devil card represents this addictive side that we are shedding. And the same with the belief in the actual infernal or Satan, right? It's again overcoming our own personal obstacles to be better people. We're not saying, well, you have to worship Satan, because many of us, if not a great deal of us, would look at that and say, yeah, but your body is your temple, therefore you worship yourself. We're not worshiping Satan at all. It's all about worshiping the self. And we use Baphomet as a teaching tool, right? Baphomet represents the fundamentals of alchemy, but also the fundamentals of basic magic, right? Where we reach out to the stars to draw down to the earth when we're performing rites of magic, when we're performing ritual. And then, of course, there are going to be people who will say, well, what about the Black Mass, right? True, we have a Black Mass, but it's not to make fun of Christianity. It's not to poke fun at other religions. It is simply a ritual. And we have rituals in paganism for pretty much everything and anything you can think of. So saying that we are bad is a bit like saying voodoo bad or hoodoo bad or shamanism bad, right? Everything is relative. And the purpose of Satanism is to teach. Is to teach and perform works of charity. That's all we're doing. We're not after anything else. We're not after the Antichrist. We're not after sort of shattering society to bend people to our will. Again, I'm trying to get you guys over the stereotypes, over the boundaries of hate that you may have, to see a different picture. And that picture is far more grounded in reality. All right, let's go. Let's continue. Some people who identify as Christians have also said they will set aside their differences in beliefs and work with the organization in helping the community. Yet the Christians get it. That there are a great deal of Christians that would look at Satanism and they're like, maybe we were wrong. Maybe the Bible was wrong, right? Maybe our thought process was hindered by negativity and by stereotypes and all of that, right? And so Christians slowly are coming to the point when they're like, well, these people aren't doing bad, they're doing good, and they're doing good without any wish for anything in return. True charity, what we believe, that true charity, we don't want rewards, we just do it because we want to better society, right? Helping each other, carrying in a newspaper for an elderly lady instead of having her pick it up, helping others take care of their animals, helping others who are suffering from mental ailments. That there's a lot there that Christians are looking at us and they're like, huh, maybe we were wrong. Maybe they are doing good. All right, let's continue. The small shift has made the organization hopeful that more people will learn about its mission and beliefs. Yeah, 100%. Hopefully, we change their minds the more people look into the Satanic Temple. Yeah. Our goal is to, like, what is our goal? Our goal is basically to do good. And if we can change your mind, then that's great. We've allowed you to expand your thought process. That's why critical thinking is vital, especially in today's generation. Many people do not critically think. They assign things on two grounds, good and bad. And once they assign things to that label, they can't see through it because they've spent generations believing this way is good, this way is bad. They don't have the ability to critically think and to actually get to a middle ground, which is neutral, which is, okay, so you do all of this good work, but you have the black mass, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, right? Okay, let's continue. Is the Satanic Temple a religion? Ah, boy. So what do we believe? If not the Lord of the Underworld, the pentagrams and devilish designs on their website are mostly just for show. I mean, yeah. The inverted pentagram is just the reverse of as above, so below. That's what it truly means, right? The inverted cross is the reversing of the tree of life, which means when we reverse the tree of life, the upside down cross, it is allowing that tree of life to regrow using the cross as its roots. So therefore, society grows again and forms another tree of life and another tree of life and another tree of life. The pentagrams have been used in every single religion you could probably even think of. In fact, you may see pentagrams on your daily commute to work. You may see pentagrams used for mathematics. You may see pentagrams, quite rightly, used in alchemy. They're used across the board. It's not to symbolize the great dark Lord himself, right? Okay, let's continue. We don't believe in a literal Satan. This is true. We don't. We don't. Dr. Sharpa Kozam, a minister and co-director of Satanic Good Works. Satan is a metaphor for resisting arbitrary authority and standing up and pushing back when necessary. This is important. This is what I want you guys to understand. It's a metaphor. We resist being told A plus B equals C. We allow for critical thinking, and we use Satan, therefore, as a metaphor. It's not a literal, it's a metaphor, right? So when people are like, oh my gosh, Satan worshiping people, often they get the stereotype and they're just saying, this is bad, this is evil, right? Are we? No. We believe in a metaphor. We believe in teaching that metaphor so people understand it. And this idea of authority, we're not a counterculture, but we sure as hell will stand up for equal rights. We sure as hell work with women's charities to help benefit women. We sure as hell will protect children, right? No pun intended with the hell references, but this is just what we do. We stand up for people's rights. And when we see those rights being infringed, boy, do we speak out about it. Why? Because we want to empower you into critical thinking. We want you to think. We want you to question. We want you to have the big theological discussions without saying you have to worship Satan, because how can you worship a metaphor? I mean, you could argue this might piss off the Christians, but okay. Is God a metaphor? That'd be one way to think about it. Is God a metaphor? See, I'm trying to get you guys to critically think. Everything that you think you know, could it be a metaphor for something else? Could God be a metaphor for the secrets of life? Could God be a metaphor for living the right path? Could God be a metaphor for doing works of charity? This is what I want you guys to start thinking on, right? When you hear all these big words, right, the divine, think to yourselves, but is it a metaphor? Is it showing us the secrets that we think we can never learn? This is another thought chain. Imagine whatever branch of paganism you guys study, is what you are studying based on the metaphor? And if that metaphor exists, then what does that metaphor represent? The divine exists, don't get me wrong. We have the diamond theory. But again, learn how to critically think. Learn how to expand your mindset beyond all of the stereotypes. It's called non-theistic Satanism, meaning they believe in neither God nor the devil. Among the members of TSC's congregation are Wiccans, pagans, and atheists. Wiccans, pagans, and atheists. So I would be a Wiccan. I'm still a part of the congregation. I'm still a member, but I'm Wiccan. And this is important that I want my fellow pagans to really take on board. Our congregation, we are pagan, but we have Wiccans, we have atheists, we have people who just need to find the answers for what they're worried about. And I think what makes Wiccans part of that congregation is that they get it. They understand the metaphor, they see through it, and they see the works of charity. In fact, this is why we do have so many Wiccans. It's because they see it, they understand it, they know it. They're thinking, so we have the Wiccan Reed, and then we have the Satanic tenets. Those two kind of meet eye to eye. And so, yeah, we have Wiccans. We have people that may not even believe in any form of the divine, as this article says, atheists. Why would atheists be satanic? Well, because they want to do good in their community, but they don't want to ascribe to a religion. But Satanism is not a religion in a theistical sense. It is, but it isn't at the same time. It's kind of like a paradox. So what makes it a religion then? Texas State University religious studies professor Joseph Laycock defines religion as an ultimate concern that a group shares. So it's an ultimate concern that a group shares. So in Christianity, what is the ultimate concern? The ultimate concern is to be loving and caring. What is the ultimate concern in Satanism? To be loving, caring, and doing works of charity without even being asked, to stand up for people's rights, to stand up against a sort of tyrannical leadership, if you want to put it that. Or maybe people are having a bad day. Look out for them. So our ultimate concern is to do the best that we can within our means, and to really help others out who are having a bad day. He continues, I think that for some members of TSC, this is an ultimate concern. Yeah, I would agree. The most important thing for them is to create what they consider to be a more just version of society. Correct. We want society, our end goal, our major plan, right? And again, there are going to be Wiccans who are going to watch it, and hopefully I will change your mind a little, right? Our ultimate concern, our big game plan is to better society, to right all the wrongs, to bring people together, to build communities, and to build a sense of a decent, hardworking society by just going out there and doing all the charity and doing all of this and etc. is to really be better. How can we get rid of all the hate in society? That's a common concern. Well, if we can bring society together to the point where they're no longer fighting, when there's no more racism, where there's no more bigotry, where there's no more anything, right? This is how we want society to be. To revert society back to when people do care about each other, when they're not afraid of each other, when they don't think people have some kind of ulterior motive. And when we look at society today, there are a lot of issues. We have systemic racism, bigotry, and hatred in our society. Why? Some of it is generational. Others is done through political avenues, meaning, You know, you have the far right and the far left, right? They're never going to see eye to eye. That's just never going to happen. But when we look at things like this, we tackle the social concerns. We want kids just to be kids. We want women's rights. We want to be recognized as transgender people. Can transgenders be Satanists? Absolutely. Why? Because we believe in body autonomy. All right, let's move on. Just as Christianity has the Ten Commandments, Satanism builds its foundation on the 7 fundamental tenets. Yeah. Our lives are governed by the tenets, which is to harm none. To harm none. You know, this is why I think we have so many Wiccans within Satanism, is they kind of get it. I sort of, you know, before I meld it both together, I am a Wiccan high priestess, but at the same time, I'm still a member of TSC. I understand how both avenues of magic and theology really work. What is the ultimate concern? Again, it goes back to what he says. Religion is defined as the ultimate concern. What is impacting our global society in any given day? That is the ultimate concern. The tenets are based on empathy. Yep. Personal autonomy and justice. Correct. Yeah. To act, as this article says, with compassion to all creatures. We show compassion to everything. Why? Because that's what being a member of a good society does, to show care and compassion for people who are just down on their luck, to show care and compassion for people who are finding it hard to struggle with the daily cost of living here in the US, right? We show care and compassion to the sick. We minister to the dying. We minister to those that are generally calling out for help. This is why the 7 tenets are a thing. They emphasize acting with, as I said, compassion to all creatures, respecting others' freedom to do as they choose, and following one's best scientific understanding of the world. We're very scientific, right? So we have a scientific view of how nature works. We have a scientific view of magic. We have a scientific view of how society should function. I mean, in America in 2026, is our society functioning? No, it's dysfunctioning. There's so much violence out there. I don't need to tell you guys this, but if you turn on the news for like 10 seconds, there's so much violence in our society. Why? Because people are just lashing out. Why? Because people are hyped up by the news media. They're hyped up by the sense of there must be blood everywhere. And if there isn't, they wait for the next bite of news to come along with a gory story, and suddenly we're back at it, right? Where society chain reacts to what they're being told. They don't tend to think clearly and to take a step back and think violence is not the way forward. Violence is never good, right? This is why we have Wiccans within Satanism, is, as I said, they get it. They understand it. Right, let's continue. Satanic representation campaign. Religious pluralism is one of the core beliefs of TSC. Yep, correct. Since its founding in 2013, the Satanic Temple has pushed back on singular religious invocations and displays on public property such as schools and city buildings. Yeah, because we want you guys to think. Part of what we do as a Satanist every single day is to critically think, is to take a step back and think, why are people doing this? Why are people saying that? Why are people believing in posts on Facebook? Why are people falling for these scams everywhere? Why are people so intrinsically drawn to the sheer level of violence that exists within our society? So we analyze things. We look at things in a completely different light. All right, let's continue. The 2022 Supreme Court case of Kennedy versus Bremerton School District created a new interpretation of the separation of church and state, Laycock said. The ruling overturned the Lemon test, a test the court used to determine whether a law violated the Establishment Clause, which prohibits the government from favoring one religion over another. Currently in the US, I find it funny that currently in the US, there is a growing Christian nationalist movement which takes Christianity to far right extremes, where they want to establish a tyranny in order to govern properly. And so the separation between church and state right now here in the US, I would argue that there is no separation, because the state is allowing religion to say what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. They'll come up with all the red tape and all of the verbiage to try and mislead you into thinking there's a separation, when quite honestly, there isn't. We see this in the news. We see this in press releases. We see this in rhetoric being taught in schools, where schools are being told you have to push Christianity. And anything that is not Christian, we cannot teach. That this is the sort of state of our society, right? Where we are being influenced as a society by a far-right Christian movement. I'm just saying, trying to get you guys to critically think. It's kind of what I do. Now the court focuses on history and tradition to settle cases related to the Establishment Clause. Laycock said Texas has been able to use Christianity's place in the state's tradition and history to implement new requirements, such as displaying the Ten Commandments in public schools and Bible verses in public school curriculum. See, this is what I don't like. Why should we be influencing the Bible onto young children whose brains have not fully developed yet? You're restricting that development. You're saying, oh, but we want you to look at life through the Christian lens and to be educated through the Christian lens in a public school. If you want to teach Christianity in a school, do it with a school that's Christian to begin with, or do it with institutions that are Catholic or Protestant or whatever the situation. But I believe that when we start influencing the far-right Christian nationalist movement onto young children, that crosses a line, because children's brains are not developed. I hate to burst the bubble here, but they're young. Their brains are not developed until they come of age. So they're being led into a form of discourse, which really, I mean, truth be told, is adult related, because adults can distinguish between fact and fiction. And part of the issue with the Bible is it is so heavily plagiarized and so heavily stolen from pretty much every single world religion you could name, that the Bible itself, and here's why I hope to burst the bubble a little bit, but the Bible is a work of fiction. It's not an a priori text. It's not something that was written, at the time. It was written long after the time, using stolen stories to push a rhetoric. But Christians don't, the far-right Christian movement here in the States doesn't even want to entertain that theory, that they'd sooner run with an outdated rhetoric where you have to hate everything. If it's not in the Bible, you have to hate it. Or if it's frowned on in the Bible, or if the stories in the Bible tell you certain people look different and therefore you can hate them. That there's a lot in the Bible that is part of the reason why there is so much racism and so much bigotry and hatred here in the US. And what happens is society doesn't want to entertain a theological debate. They don't want to sit down and really discuss the finer points, right? Does the Bible have racism? Yeah. Does the Bible have violence? Yeah. How is, again, the ultimate concern, God? How is God referenced? God is referenced as a wrathful being. To a religion, that is peace-loving. The math doesn't really math. And when we start to influence our children into this, children come away thinking they're going to get struck down by God if they do something wrong. Now, you could counter argue that by saying, but the Christians also teach how to live properly without harming anyone. Well, harming anyone is a central tenet across every single religion you can name. The idea that we harm none. We do what we want as long as we don't harm anyone. That's part of the thing, right? we go through our lives without needing to cause harm. What is harm? Harm is infecting somebody with something. So, in other words, if you hug somebody that doesn't want to be hugged, that's harm. If you refuse to help an elderly person cross the street or whatever, right, that could be considered harm because they may not have the strength to do certain things. And so you are harming them. This idea of harming none is not a Christian thing, it's a global thing. But the Christians take it to whole new levels where the current rhetoric at the far right, or kind of the extreme right, if you want to call it that, is harm none as long as they're Christian. But that doesn't count against people who are not Christian. You can harm people who are not Christian, but you cannot harm someone who is Christian. That's their current thought process. And as I mentioned, when we start influencing our young by getting them to read the Bible, or getting them to cement the 10 Commandments, you are in a way causing harm. So you're violating the very tenet of not causing harm by causing harm by influencing children into a world of fiction, which makes no real theological, ecclesiastical sense. This is part of the problem. And this is what we are facing here in the US, is this need to hyper-Christianize absolutely everything, from the government to the halls of power, all the way down through society. And this is why there's so much violence which is going on in our communities. It's because people are being fed a rhetoric that deep down they may not believe in, but they feel they have to go along with the Joneses in order to be accepted by their neighbors or by their co-workers or whatever the situation. And it is causing harm. That makes it hard for minority religions in the US to fight for equal representation in public spaces because they don't have enough historical ties to warrant those displays, he said. Yeah, he's got a point. If you look at how, switching over to my witch side, if you look at how people view witchcraft, right? As soon as you say witchcraft to a general person in society, they picture elderly women with a black brimmed hat and a crooked nose. But they don't see it as a valid religion. They don't see it as a valid way of life. They see it through stereotypes. And this is part of the problem, is people look at minority religions through stereotypes. Look at how people respond to the global pagan community, especially from the Christian aspect, right? They look at pagans as peace-loving hippies. That's what an average Christian will tell you a pagan is. Are they? No. I mean, they love peace. Yeah, who doesn't love peace? But we've allowed the stereotype to really dictate what people think. They've created this new interpretation of what it means to have separation of church and state that really tilts the playing field for Christianity, like I said, and against any other religion. Yeah. So on paper, there is freedom of religion. That's on paper. In practice, not so much. In practice, the scales are like here. So this is Christianity, this is paganism. These are the scales. What we want is to rebalance those scales so that we're equal. We want paganism to be equal. We want Islam to be equal. We want Judaism to be equal. We want Buddhism to be equal. We want Hinduism to be equal. We want to kind of rebalance that scale of religion here in the US. And it's an uphill battle because we're fighting against a government which is hell-bent on pushing a Christian nationalist rhetoric, which is it's either our way or the highway. And we're going to come after you if you're pagan. Or we're going to say you don't have the same equal rights as anyone else. This is, you know, in a way it's turning into a sermon. I get it, right? But there's a difference between what is written under the law, freedom of religion, and religion in practice. In practice, it's unbalanced. In practice, we are fighting an uphill battle. In practice, we still are seen as minorities. I've been a pagan all my life, but I will tell you that we are still considered minority. Why? Because the scales of balance are not equal. They sure as hell look equal on paper when you read the amendment, but that's an amendment, that's a piece of paper. But they sure as hell are not the same when it comes to practice. Okay. Laycock said, naming the Satanic Temple as one of the more established minority religions, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. Yeah, correct. We are established, but people still view Satanism in a negative light. And you have to ask yourself, are they just doing this because they're keeping up with the Joneses, or are they doing this because they have this hatred which will never die? All right, let's continue onwards. TSC has sued cities and counties across the country for religious discrimination after they put up the 10 Commandments on public property or held prayer sisters or council meetings. I mean, yeah, truth be told, we have. And the reason why we do it is there is a time and a place for religion. There's a time and a place, especially a place, but there is a time and a place for the 10 Commandments. But it should have nothing to do with the federal level. If you want to have the 10 Commandments, that's what churches are for. No offense. I'm just saying. We argue that since we're not allowed to do things, why should the Christians be allowed to affect things on a federal level, especially in schools? Why do we have to have a prayer at a city council meeting? You may have councilmen and women who are not even Christian to begin with. So why are we influencing our will? What the heck is going on here, right? This is why we have sued. We're not doing it just for the attention. We're not doing it for the 5 minutes of fame or whatever the minute is. I think it's 15 minutes of fame, but we're not doing it for fame. We're doing it to call out the bullshit. We're doing it to say, hey, look, why are you influencing Christian nationalist agenda in places where that agenda doesn't belong? That's the core of the argument. All right, let's continue. Most recently, Amarillo's city government put up a 10 Commandments display in its city hall, and TSC requested to put their monument up as well. The city gave them an application to have their monument displayed, and we're still communicating with the city. If you can do it, we can do it. So if the Christians can have the 10 Commandments, okay, more power to you, but we can do it as well. That's equal religion. That's balancing the playing field. And the Christians are like, nah, because it's Baphomet, and Baphomet represents Satan. Does he? No. Baphomet is a teaching tool. We just use it as one reference, right? And there is a stereotype there, which I hope you guys are now overcoming, is Baphomet is a teaching tool. It represents, in its strictest form, as above, so below. It's a sabbatical goat, in other words, right? Where the goat represents the co-joining of humanity and animals together. So we are a part of the animal kingdom, just as the animal kingdom is a part of us. That's the kind of rhetoric, right? But the Christians are like, yeah, but you can't do that. But at the same time, we're going to have the 10 Commandments up. Now you see where the hypocrisy is, right? Okay, let's move on. TST says the advocacy for religious pluralism isn't just for Satanism. No, because it isn't. It's equal religions equally. We want the 14th Amendment to be equal across the board. It's to protect the freedom of all minority religions. This is true. We protect all minority religions. Erin Hellion, TSC's Director of Religious Reproductive Rights, said that the law isn't being used to protect all religions equitably. No, it isn't. Right now, the law favors Christianity. Law doesn't favor paganism. Look at all the drama that Harold Carter went through with Covenstead. He got targeted with zoning because he was not Christian. Let's just be honest. If he was a Christian, they probably wouldn't have hit him with zoning. They probably, I mean, they might have done something, but what he got hit with was, again, this idea of an unbalanced system, where the system is running with Christian rhetoric, but it's not running with logical, clear thinking or equal rights in mind. As a satanic atheist organization, we have the right to those same protections as well, and so do our members. Yeah, she's got a point. We have that right. Why? Because the amendment says so. But the Christians are going to be like, yeah, but the amendment only favors Christianity. It doesn't favor anything else. And because they run with that rhetoric, this is what the government is doing. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not anyone really. I'm just some strange hybrid high priestess and Satanist, right? I'm just some hybrid. But I sure as hell know that the 14th Amendment is not equal. I sure as hell know that most of the amendments right now are not equal. Completely unbalanced. Let's continue onwards. Although the Satanic Temple may seem dark and spooky, are we? No, not really. And a lot of its imageries tend to be spooky. I mean, imagery across religions can take on many forms. Its leaders and members say its mission is far from anything evil. Yeah, we're not. I had a conversation with Harold Carter, and he said to me, I'm not down with Satan. Well, neither am I. What I am down with is this idea of the ultimate concern. And that ultimate concern is to make society a better place. TSC is misconceived often as a dark spot or this kind of culty anonymous organization, Hellion said. No, we're not a cult. Not even close. No, I would say not even close. Take that out of the equation. When in actuality, it's a gathering of some of the kindest souls I've ever met who just want to give back to their communities and to their country to make sure that there is still a boundary between church and state. That's our goal. We believe the state should be the state. We believe that there should be a boundary where the Christian nationalist movement can do whatever the hell they want to do, as long as they're not trying to merge together church and state, because that then goes against all freedoms. All right, so there we go with the article. I hope this has cleared up some of your misconceptions of Satanism. What do you think of this article? Leave me all your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll respond to them in the next video. So to sum up, we believe in charity. We believe in doing good work. We believe in helping each other. We believe in building the bridges, but we take a stand when it comes to just how far the Christian nationalist movement is going. And that includes influencing our young. We feel that the young should not be influenced, that the young should, when they're ready, be able to figure out what religion they want to belong to, what religious path they want to take. But the Christian movement here in the US is hell-bent on bringing Christianity to absolutely everywhere without any form of wanting to have a shared equal space. That doesn't work in modern society, but this is the state in which we find ourselves in. As minority, as pagan, we are still considered the minority. We're still considered the other. We're still considered with all of the stereotypes and hatred and bigotry and all of these other big words. So there we go. Before I head off, please help support Witchcraft TV. Show Harold Carter some love. Also, please help support satanic content creators. You can check them out at TST TV. That is satanictemple.tv. And I will talk to you guys later.